I was kind of shocked. Wait a minute, is that real?
In our district?
Yes, District 14, all the way county.
Remember him in the Ray Billy Center? Oh, fantastic. Oh, very energetic. No, I doubt it. But did you read George Will's
Well, good afternoon. Let me welcome you all here. My name is Ted Yates. I'm a program coordinator here at Shell Point, and this is our general election candidate forum for our federal office. In this forum, we'll hear from three of the gentlemen who are running for the U.S. House District 14 seat, currently held by Congressman Connie Mack, who is unable to make it today. So we have his three challengers here. The point of this forum is, of course, to get you acquainted with these candidates and to let them see what Shell Point's all about. We have a great history of being a precinct that votes at very high voter turnout, and we expect this election to be no different. And so we appreciate you coming today. I'm sure a lot of residents have already made up their minds who they're voting for, but we do expect to have a spirited discussion among you here today and our candidates. So thank you all for being here. Thank you for being here. We will run this forum very similarly to the one we ran this morning for those of you that were here. We'll hear from each of the candidates with some opening introductions and remarks, telling you a little bit about themselves and their platforms, and then we'll open the floor for you to ask questions of the candidates. Of course, we ask that you ask questions that are applicable to all of the candidates that they can all answer. With that, I'd like to begin. And our three candidates this afternoon, if you would help me welcome them, our no party affiliation candidate for Congress, Mr. Jeff George. Democrat, Mr. Robert Neild. And running with no party affiliation, Mr. Bert Saunders. Mr. George, I'd like to invite you to make your opening statements.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Jeff George, and I am running with no party affiliation to be your representative for Florida District 14 in the U.S. House of Representatives. I grew up here in Southwest Florida. My family moved here in 1973, and in 1987, I enlisted in the U.S. Army as an intelligence analyst. I spent 5 years in the Army. During that time, I was stationed in Germany during the fall of the Berlin Wall. I was stationed in Korea along the DMZ. Afterwards, I went to technical school and got involved in the internet business at the height of the dot-com boom, where I spent 3 years traveling around North America, South America, Africa, and Europe, setting up networks all over the country. Once I got done with that, I eventually started my own video production company. In 2004, we went to Damascus, Syria, and shot a documentary about Islam. And now I'm taking all of this experience, all of my time here in Southwest Florida, and I'm trying to turn that to figuring out exactly what it is this district needs to be truly represented in Washington, D.C. Because if there's one thing that I know from all this experience, it's that we're not being represented right now. We've all been suffering in recent years because of a corrupt federal government that's hopelessly divided along party lines. It's brought us nothing of the threat of war without end, failed energy environmental policies, irresponsible government spending, and a disastrous, unregulated casino-style economy that's based on nothing more than more and more debt. Now, as the majority of us here are struggling to keep our homes, pay our medical bills, feed our families, or even just buy enough gas to make it to work, wealthy special interests are pouring hundreds of millions into a corrupt system of campaign financing that's guaranteeing that when they make mistakes, they get bailed out and we get left holding the bag. Now, it's time for that to change. And I want to thank all of you for coming out here today. And I want to point out that when you come to enough of these events, after a while it seems like every politician who comes up here, particularly those of us who are running against an incumbent, we all tend to sound the same. We all say, hey, elect me, I'm going to go up there, I'm going to change things, I'm going to fight corruption. The question that you have to ask yourself is, how do you verify that? And this is what we're trying to do. All of that experience that I mentioned with video and the internet, we're trying to look at using the new media in a way that's never been done before. So what I'm doing now as a candidate, and what I will do later as your congressman, everything that I say and do on the campaign trail is recorded and videotaped. And then we make all of that footage available to you, the citizens of this district, so that we have 100% transparency and accountability. Because there are a lot of issues, important issues that are facing this country right now. No doubt the big issue on everybody's mind right now is the economy. And clearly just bailing out Wall Street isn't enough. The real issues with the economy aren't ultimately in the mortgage industry or in the credit industry. The real problems with the economy are on Main Street. And so this is what we've got to take care of. We've got to take care of making sure that there are jobs out there for people. We've got to make sure that there is real, viable, universal health care for every American available. We have to make sure that Social Security and pension funds are intact. And we have to reinvest in the middle class by building infrastructure, education, and we have to make sure that there are incentives for small businesses. And one of the best ways that we can do that here in Florida is we can tackle our energy problems. We can invest in clean energy, solar, wind. All of these things will help boost the economy, which brings us to the second issue when we talk about energy, which is, of course, the war on terror and the fact that we need to eliminate our dependence on foreign oil. We also need to make sure that this country has a foreign policy that's respected around the world. It's not enough to simply go against the tyrants that are opposing our positions of the day and to support the tyrants that tend to agree with us at any given time. We've got to have the courage of our convictions. We've got to make sure that if we go out there and we talk about freedom and democracy, that we are applying this equally to everybody. Now, all of these issues aren't going to get taken care of in the long term until we change the way that business is done in Washington. And that's what this campaign is all about. And I look forward to taking your questions. And again, thank you for having me here.
Thank you, Mr. George. Mr. Neal?
Good afternoon. How many of you received your sample ballot from the Supervisor of Elections? If you examine your sample ballot, my name is the second name on the second race. I hope that those of you that have already voted managed to find my name, the second name on the second race. My name is Robert Neal, and I'm running for this seat because I want to represent you in the United States House of Representatives. Please give me about 4.5 minutes to tell you why. Mr. George sounds like a Democrat, talking about education and health care and energy policies. And you know what? Those are the things that I speak about too. I continue to oppose drilling off the shores of the state of Florida. And I'll tell you why. I think that any oil we find there will be too little, too late. If we were to take that money that we would otherwise spend on drilling and invest it in an energy program similar to the Manhattan Project of the 1940s, the one where we developed a nuclear weapon to end World War II, I think if we put our brightest minds to work on this problem, that they'll be able to invent and reinvent renewable energy sources from solar, wind, tide, hydro, maybe even nuclear will be more safe, and hydrogen may be an option in the future also. So I don't support any further drilling, not even as a stopgap measure. I think if we give them an inch, they'll take a mile, and we'll never break the stranglehold that fossil fuels currently have on us. I support education and health care as a part of infrastructure. You know, many times we're told that universal health care is a scary thing, and it is scary to me too. But if we consider it as infrastructure, roads, bridges, fire, police, ports, airports, education, and health care, everybody uses it, everybody pays. What happens when we treat it that way, our children become healthier and our children become more educated. And if they're healthier and more educated, they are better able to compete in the world economy. Now the jobs that are currently being sent overseas can be performed right here at home to provide for the economic success of our country as opposed to the economic success of someone else's country. The money that we spend on the fossil fuels transfers a huge amount of wealth each year to countries that may not be our friends. Some of that money gets funneled to terrorists. I believe that the terrorists are in the mountains of Afghanistan and Pakistan. Accordingly, I think we should support those two nations in their efforts to hunt and terminate those who would do harm to us and to others around the world. I support a swift and responsible end to the war in Iraq. But a responsible end to the war does not necessarily depend so much on when we end it, but on what we do after we end the war. For instance, if we just leave Iraq and do not help those people educate their children and take care of their children for the wounds that we've caused, then they will hate us, and it will be easy to take the children and indoctrinate them to further hate Americans and the West, just like those in Afghanistan learned to hate us after we left the covert war when they were fighting the Soviets. But if we will send doctors and we will send teachers, we can endear ourselves to the Iraqi people. They will begin to be educated and more healthy, and they will appreciate what we've done for them. And not in the 2-year term of a congressman, but over a couple of generations, they will become a peaceful people, peace-loving just like we are, and wanting to participate in the world economy just like we do. I look forward to your questions this afternoon. I'm very happy to be here. As you might remember, I ran in 2004 and 2006 for this same seat, and you've always been very kind to invite me out to speak to you and offer you my views on the issues of the day. And I'm glad to be back to talk to you. My name is Robert Neal. I'm a candidate for the United States House of Representatives, Florida's 14th Congressional District, the second name on the second race. Please vote for me on November 4th.
Thank you, Mr. Neal. Senator Saunders.
Thank you. My name is Bert Saunders. I'm a member of the Florida Senate and have been your senator for the last 10 years. I've had the pleasure of coming out here to Shell Point on numerous occasions. As a matter of fact, about 4 or 5 months ago, I came out here to talk about some of the environmental issues that I had worked on, some of the health care issues, some of the public safety issues that I've been working on for many, many years. I want to thank all of you for coming out this afternoon. It takes an awful lot of effort to stop what you're doing and come out to listen to candidates. So I want to applaud all of you for taking the time to learn a little bit more about each of us. You can find out an awful lot about my campaign on my webpage at bertsaunders.com. There are position papers on a variety of issues. But I want to talk a little bit about what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. I was introduced as a candidate with no party affiliation. As all of you in this room know, I've been a Republican for 26 years. I've been a Republican office holder for 22 of those years. The last 10 years as your state senator, caucusing with the Republicans, but working with independents and working with Democrats. I made the decision to run with no party affiliation, to put this into the general election ballot, so that all of you would have an opportunity to vote, not just the 10 or 15% that vote in a Republican primary, but the 85 to 90% that are going to be voting in this contested presidential election cycle. So for those of you that are Democrats, you have an opportunity to vote for me, as well as independents and Republicans. Now, I will tell you, for my Democratic friends out here, that this race is between the incumbent, Connie Mack, and Bert Saunders. And I would urge you to take a look at all of the candidates, but when you get into the opportunity to vote, just keep in mind that, especially those of you that are Democrats and independents, this is a race between Connie Mack and me. For those of you that are Republicans, it does sound a little strange that as a Republican office holder, I'm running with no party affiliation. Well, I have put in my literature that I will caucus with the Republicans. I will be part of the Republican leadership team. And so for those of you that are concerned about the balances in the United States House of Representatives, electing Bert Saunders will not change that at all. Now, let me tell you why I made the decision to run. I made the decision to run because, quite frankly, I'm angry and I'm saddened at where this country is heading. There's nothing but partisan gridlock in Washington, D.C. And you see this on a variety of major issues. For example, the issue of energy independence. We all know that we're spending over $700 billion a year transferring our wealth to many nations that don't simply like us very much. We also know that a lot of that money winds up in the hands of our enemies, the terrorists. I had the pleasure of doing the energy bill for the Florida Senate this year. We have a great policy for energy here in the state of Florida. We're going to make our buildings more energy efficient. We're going to make our vehicles more energy efficient. But you know, we don't have an energy policy at the federal level because of the partisan bickering. Immigration reform. We all talked about immigration reform for a number of years, and then all of a sudden it fell off the radar screen. No one's talking about immigration reform. You know what? Nothing has been done to correct our immigration problems in this country. Nothing's being done because of, again, partisan bickering and gridlock. I want to go to Washington, D.C. and fix the immigration problems, to develop a workable program for all of us in this country, to stop the flow of illegal immigrants into this country so that we know who's coming here and so that we can make sure that the right people are coming and the right people are staying. Healthcare. We all know that healthcare in this country is in crisis. We all know that we spend too much on healthcare. 16% of the gross domestic product goes into healthcare. It's going up at the rate of 7% per year. We can't sustain that. We also know that there's a tremendous amount of waste in the way we deliver health care, the way we bill for health care, the way we manage it. It's just too cumbersome, too expensive. We spend about 31% of the medical dollar on managing health care. The rest of the world, it's 14, 15%. In this country, it was 16% just a few short years ago. Now that difference between 16% then and 31% now in our healthcare system is almost $300 billion that we're wasting in our healthcare system. The issue of defensive medicine, doctors performing tests that aren't necessary to avoid liability. Another 10 to 20% of the medical dollar is simply wasted. That's another $200 to $300 billion every year wasted in our healthcare system. And you know why? Because of the stranglehold that the special interests have on Congress, the insurance industry, the trial bar. I want to go to Washington, D.C. to stop that, to work for the people of this state and this nation. There are a variety of issues, and I realize that time is short, so let me just simply say that I have served you for the last 10 years in the Florida Senate. I have a tremendous record on environmental preservation, on health care, on economic development, and I hope to have your support to continue to be your congressman and to work for you as your next congressman. Thank you very much.
Thank you all very much. At this time, we'd like to open the floor for questions. If you have a question, just raise your hand and we'll have someone with a microphone come to you. That way we can all hear your question. And this first question comes from right over here.
I heard one candidate address this. Let me address it to all three. Do you favor offshore drilling off the coast of Florida? And if the answer is yes, how close to Fort Myers Beach, Sanibel, or Cape Coral are you willing to have them drill?
Thank you for your question. I'd like to go in reverse order as we did the opening statement. So, Senator Saunders, that was for you.
Thank you very much. As I mentioned, I have a tremendous track record in terms of environmental preservation. As a matter of fact, I'm getting a statewide award next week from the Republicans for Environmental Preservation. I've received awards from the Florida Audubon and numerous other organizations. I say that as a preface to the answer to the question, which is I do support drilling off the shores of Florida. Now we're talking about a minimum of 100 miles off the shores of Florida. And I will tell you that the experiences from Hurricanes Ike and Katrina, as well as the experiences in the North Sea, where these platforms are battered by severe storms constantly, that these platforms are safe. They have valves that are actually on the ocean floor. Whenever there's a storm approaching, they simply cut off the flow of oil at the ocean floor level. We have to stop our dependence on expensive foreign oil. Now this is only a little piece, and I hope we get into this later, only a little piece of a big energy policy puzzle that we have. But we will always need oil. We may not need it for our automobiles. We may not need it to generate electricity, but we will always need oil in this country. We need to produce it here. We need to do it in a safe manner. We need to make sure that we're not spoiling the environment, and I'm convinced that we can do that. And using our own resources, I think, is important for the future of this country.
Mr. Neal?
As I mentioned in my opening statements, I'm sorry, I do not support drilling. I think it's too little too late, and I believe that if our brightest minds will go to work on the problem, we literally can find better ways to use wind, solar, hydro, tide, and nuclear. And my real dream is that my nephew, who's a very bright young man, will invent a little bowling pin size piece of equipment that converts water into hydrogen and oxygen that can be immediately burned in our cars, in our airplanes, in our buses, in our trucks, to power a generator that runs the electricity in our home, to incinerate waste. If he could invent that, he would be a wealthy young man and I would be his uncle. So that's what I really, really hope. Is it on the horizon? Well, we don't see it today, but remember in 1941, we didn't see a nuclear weapon or nuclear energy either. Through that Manhattan-type project, or a project similar to the 1960s when we put a man on the moon and returned him safely to the earth, if we'll go to work on it, we can do it, and we'll become more competitive economically and energy-wise around the world.
Thank you, Mr. George.
Thank you. I am also against lifting the drilling ban, and there's a couple of reasons for this. The first is, despite all of the safeguards and all the advances in technology, there is the potential for environmental damage that we shouldn't ignore. According to Scientific American, the average deep sea rig puts out about 900,000 tons of waste, including a lot of metal shavings and other industrial things over the course of its lifetime of use. Secondly, when we talk about the storms, there have been oil spills and there have been problems. Hurricane Ike, nearly 500,000 barrels of crude oil spilled off on the coast of Texas and around the Galveston area. So there is a risk, and all it takes is one spill. All it takes is damage from one tanker, and that's the end of our beautiful beaches for a very long time. Now, the other issue has to do with the economics. And I think that this is going to cease to be as big of an issue as it has been this past year for a couple of key reasons. First of all, with the price of crude oil going down, you're going to hear the oil companies promoting this less and less. And the reason for that is when we talk about the Gulf of Mexico, they already have access to 8 billion barrels that they're not drilling on. And what we're arguing over is a potential of another 4 billion barrels. This is in the area that's currently excluded. So they have access to resources that they're not drilling now. And the bottom line is any amount that we can take from the Gulf or off the continental shelf is a tiny fraction of our overall oil consumption. And we need to break away from this dependence on oil and start developing these alternative energy sources like wind, like solar, like geothermal. I'm not opposed to nuclear. It's not my first choice, but I think this is viable options. But the bottom line is we have to give up this addiction, and the sooner we stop talking about this drilling and get on to developing real alternatives, the better off we'll be.
Thank you. Do we have another question?
Thank you. We all, or at least almost all of us here, probably benefit from Medicare. I was very interested in your comments. Everybody's in favor of improving health care. Do any of you favor House Bill 676, which has been in the House of Representatives for a number of years, which has been entitled by many people Medicare for All? This has been sponsored by the Physicians for National Health Program. A large number of physicians have joined this, including me, I'll be honest, with that. And it looks like a single-payer program in which the government would handle the payment. They do not handle the care. It's not socialized medicine. I'd be very interested in your positions about it.
Thank you for your question. Mr. Neal, will you start us off with that one?
Sure, I'll be happy to. If you examine my website, I have a seven-minute video and the related transcript about my position on Medicare. I believe it's quickly summarized as a progressive incrementalist. What I have suggested is expanding the Medicare program by every time a president raises his or her hand to take the oath of office, I want to change the age of eligibility for Medicare by 5 years. So next January, when the president raises his hand, we would drop the age of eligibility from 65 to 60 and increase it from 0 to age 5. Here's what happens if we do. A 60-year-old now who otherwise is not covered by health insurance is now covered by Medicare. They start to go to the doctor, so when they get to be 65, their health is better, and it costs us less to care for them after they reach age 65. A baby who has good prenatal care and good well baby care with all the immunizations is healthier and more able to learn. So when they reach school, they're easier educated and we save money on the education. Yes, it costs us for the Medicare program, but if we treat it as infrastructure, we'll all understand it. Then 4 years from January 2009, we change it again from age 60 to 55 and from age 5 to 10. If we follow that program, we will, by the year 2032, have all Americans covered under the Medicare program. It will have expanded to cover all Americans and will all be covered by reasonable health care. I say reasonable because Medicare is not perfect, but it's in place and it works. And I'd like to take surveys in rooms like this. How many are covered by Medicare? Everyone raises their hand. How many would give up their Medicare benefits? Nobody raises their hand. So that's my proposal for expanding Medicare to cover all of our American citizens.
Thank you. Mr. George?
Thank you, sir. That's an excellent question. The fact of the matter is that I have been, from the beginning of this campaign, a strong advocate of having a real national single-payer health care system. And HR 676 is the cornerstone of how I think we can accomplish that. Now, we have a problem in this country. Everybody knows about the problem with health care that we have. But the bigger problem with health care isn't the quality of care that people aren't getting. The big problem with health care is the fact that the majority of physicians in this country say we need a single-payer system. The majority of voters in this country want a single-payer system. Why isn't this happening? This isn't happening because of what's going on in Washington, D.C. This isn't happening because of the stranglehold that the drug lobbies, the pharmaceutical lobby, and the insurance lobbies have over Congress. Now, the only way, right now, HR 676 has, I believe, 79 co-sponsors in the House, give or take. I could be mistaken about the exact number of that. Everybody in the country wants this. The people in the medical industry want it. I work at Lehigh Pulmonary Associates. I work with patients every day. I see people who are denied care. I see people who have portability issues. And the only way that we're going to change this is if we have a single-payer plan. And the only way that that's going to happen is we have got to end the Republican Democratic opposition from both sides of the aisle that's coming to this plan, and we the people have got to take back our government and make sure that we have a real viable universal health care plan.
Thank you. Mr. Saunders?
Thank you. I appreciate the question, and I tried to give us an entree into that conversation by talking about the fact that our system is so overly complex that we are literally wasting hundreds of billions of dollars a year just in the way we bill for health care and in the way we manage it. HR 676 certainly may be a step in the right direction. And I say maybe because we have tinkered around the edges of healthcare in this country for many, many decades. We don't really have a healthcare delivery system. We have a system that's been cobbled together over many, many years. Whenever there's a problem, there's a little fix to the problem. And what we wound up with is a hodgepodge of programs that simply don't work anymore. About 20% of our population has no meaningful access to health care at all. They have no insurance, and they wind up in the emergency room. The Florida Hospital Association has reported that just about all of our major safety net hospitals in this state are losing money, many of which will start to close. That affects every one of us in this room. Whether you've got good health care coverage or not, it affects you. You see your doctors becoming concierge doctors. You see your emergency rooms being crowded so that if you have an emergency, you can't even get in there. You see your hospital, you'll start seeing your hospitals close. So we do have to do things differently. We have to overhaul the entire system, and we have to do it in a meaningful way. I support free market health care. I support, my wife's a physician. I want my surgeon, for example, I want him, if he's operating on me, I don't want him worrying about how he's going to make his mortgage payment. I want him operating and doing the best he can, knowing that he'll make more money by being in the free market system. But that doesn't mean that we have to have a multitude of different payment systems. We don't have to have 100 insurance companies, each with their separate programs. We don't have to have Medicaid and Medicare all billing differently for the same procedures. And so going to a single-payer system really is going to be the way to go in the future for this country. I would like to help kind of guide us in that way to make sure that it works for the patients. We want to make sure that we don't interfere with that doctor-patient relationship. We want to make sure that doctors know that they can make a good living, and the harder they work, the more money they're going to make. We don't want them to be government employees. But that doesn't mean that we can't go to some system that's simpler in terms of the way we bill and pay for health care. Thank you.
We have another question from this side of the room.
I'd like to know which of you are in favor or against, and why, a change to Medicare Part D that would permit the government to negotiate for prescription drugs.
Thank you. Mr. George, will you start?
Thank you, sir. I am in favor for that. I don't understand why it's not happening already. And again, I think this has a lot to do with the lobbying situation in Washington, D.C. Again, what I would ultimately like to see is I would like to see a single-payer system where everybody is covered. And when everybody is covered, in order for that to be affordable for the whole country, we need to make sure that we are negotiating these bulk discounts. One of the things that's important to consider when we're talking about healthcare is the fact that healthcare basically is about 1/7 of our economy right now. And that's a lot of dollars that are being spent not only on insurance, but on the drugs as well. And that's a lot of dollars that's going from the lobbyists to the candidates. And again, until we change that system, we're not going to have any real meaningful change of medical situation in this country.
Okay. Mr. Saunders.
Thank you. Another excellent question. I will tell you that the incumbent congressman is opposed to the government negotiating prescription drug prices with the pharmaceutical companies. I can't explain why the incumbent's opposed to it, but he's voted against permitting these negotiations. I will tell you that the Veterans Administration is one of the largest purchasers of drugs in the world. They negotiate. They have the cheapest prices of any government program because they negotiate for those prices. I sat on the Medicaid healthcare budget process in the Florida Senate for the last 10 years. We negotiate drug prices for the state Medicaid program. We have some of the cheapest prices for drugs. That's the only way you can get good prices, is to use the bargaining power, the strength of the system to negotiate those prices. If you think about Medicare and the millions of people that are covered and the bargaining strength that Medicare would have with the pharmaceutical companies, it is unbelievable that we don't do that. There's nothing to be gained other than a tremendous amount of savings. There's nothing to be lost. There's a tremendous amount of savings that can be there for all of us to help improve the Medicare program, to help make sure that from a financial standpoint it's well funded. I will tell you again, and I think you need to know this, that the incumbent voted consistently against permitting the government to negotiate prescription drugs for the Medicare program. If I'm elected as your next congressman, I guarantee you, and in every government program, there's going to be negotiations for prescription drugs. Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't understand either why we're not already doing that. It's my understanding that the Veterans Administration does negotiate prices for the medications that they use. So it would seem like that we would be able to do it for Medicare too, except for those lobbyists and the powerful pharmaceutical lobby, which, by the way, never gave me a campaign contribution this year. If you see them, please ask them to send me their check. I've been looking for it every day. But here's what I'd like to see happen also. When was the last time anybody saw a cigarette commercial on TV? It's probably been 30, maybe 40 years. You know why? We banned advertising by cigarette companies on TV for the good of and the health of our nation. Maybe it's time that we ban pharmaceutical advertising directly to the consumer. I got to tell you, how many times does a patient see a drug on TV that's going to solve all their problems except for this long list of side effects, and go to the doctor and ask for it? Well, now the doctor's scrambling around to try and practice good medicine. I don't have a problem with the pharmaceuticals marketing to the doctors, to the professionals. They're the ones who know what care is best for you and which side effects could hurt you the most. So, and I don't mind them advertising in the magazines. You know why? Because I'm not going to stop and read that ad in the magazine. The print's too small. I can't see it with these peepers I have left anymore. So if we will force the pharmaceuticals into a bargaining arrangement where we can negotiate prices for the medicine and prohibit them from advertising directly to the consumer on television at least, I think we're going to serve ourselves well and improve the health and the general well-being of our country.